became a nationwide search for her.
The 20-year-old Lauren Spear, a sophomore from New York, vanished off the streets of Bloomington.
We're getting close. I think we're going to solve this.
Captured on the spy pen is a conversation between Suzanne Morphew and somebody named Jeff.
Today, we are going to be investigating a college student that's still missing after a bizarre night out with friends, a young woman who went for a jog but was chased by a stalker and never returned home, and a beautiful mother who seemed to have everything, only to disappear without a single trace, leaving her husband looking extremely guilty.
Party night in a college town.
There's just so many people around and out at all hours. There was always something going on.
At Kilroy's Bar in Bloomington, Indiana, students from Indiana University pack the place and then head home in the early morning hours.
You feel very close-knit there. There's never like a question of me being unsafe.
Yet it was shortly after leaving Kilroy's, 5 years ago this month, that 20-year-old Lauren Spear, a sophomore from New York, vanished off the streets of Bloomington and has not been seen since.
I really just would like to hear this is where you can find your daughter. It's the not knowing what happened to her, where she might be, or, it's unbearable.
Imagine your child traveling miles away to attend college, where you believe that she will be safe, only to later discover that the worst has happened. That was the case for the Spire family. Lauren was your normal kid, living a normal life.
She was a great kid, high energy, very caring.
Very caring.
Loving.
She really had a zest for life.
Lauren lived a very normal, happy childhood. It involved ballet as a young girl. Her parents, Robert and Charlene, worked hard to give their daughter everything, and Lauren appreciated it, as is evident in this video taken at her bat mitzvah ceremony.
Mom and Dad, I just want to say thank you. I'm having an amazing night, and I love you too so much.
Robert and Charlene were incredibly proud, happy parents, but all it took was one phone call to change their life forever. It happened on the evening of June 3rd, 2011. The evening had started out perfectly normal.
We were eating dinner and the phone rang. I went to answer the phone and Robbie said, "Char, Lauren's missing." So it's really heart-stopping,
What followed would become one of the most famous missing person cases in the United States. Everyone across the nation was talking about what could have happened to Lauren. This is the last picture of her alive. Lauren's parents traveled to Indiana University to help lead the search for their daughter. They implored the public for help.
My first thing is to say to the person that has Lauren or that has harmed Lauren, shame on you. Shame on you.
Hundreds of volunteers turned out to help find Lauren. They checked alleyways and fields, they checked dumpsters and creeks, they broke into groups in order to cover more area and traveled to rural areas around the university. Even people who didn't know Lauren came out to help.
I came out today just to help look for Lauren, and it's just a lot of massive territory.
And that it was. There were incredibly vast forests to search through. Lauren could be anywhere. Despite all odds, her parents were still holding on to hope that their daughter would be found alive.
So you're in this massive area and you're driving, here's another pull-off, let's pull off. And then you get out of the car and then you go walking through these woods and you're calling Lauren's name and you're hoping you're gonna find her laying in the woods somewhere, and it's tough.
As the days passed and the outlook seemed to get even more grim, Robert and Charlene took to the news to assure everyone that they weren't going to give up.
Let me be firm in that we're here, still committed to finding her. It's our worst nightmare.
News of the case was spreading fast, and it was getting a lot of attention, even by celebrities like Kim Kardashian and Ryan Seacrest, who tweeted out in support of the family. As places to look for Lauren were beginning to run out, police made the decision to check a local landfill for any sign of her. Can you imagine searching through garbage in hopes of finding a piece of your missing loved one? That's what Lauren's parents were forced to do. Her father remembered that day through tears.
Probably the hardest thing that we had to do in the searches was to go to that landfill.
Yeah.
stand there, watch them.
Every painstaking day for Lauren's parents was filled with constant worry and desperation. They blamed themselves for the fact that she hadn't been found yet.
I start my every day hoping that today is the day. I go to sleep every night knowing that I have failed and that I haven't. I'm sorry. I haven't done enough.
Lauren's friends were suffering as well.
After June 3rd, it really started to sink in that this was happening.
Lauren's parents were certain that there were people out there that knew what happened to their daughter, but that they were too afraid of getting in trouble themselves to come forward. So they made a deal with the police that tips could be submitted anonymously.
You can provide anonymously is to be received through either the Bloomington Police Department or through the America's Most Wanted tip line. There will be no taping, so you can feel free to give us anything that you know, and if it leads to us finding Lauren, you'll get the reward.
Slowly, the weeks turned into months, and the months turned into years. Still, no Lauren.
This Sunday marks the one-year anniversary of the disappearance of IU student Lauren Spear.
So many years have now passed that the missing posters of Lauren are now hard to come by at her old university, and many students don't even know who she is.
There's not really much talk of it anymore, no.
It's old news. I think we should let it go and move on.
But Lauren's parents aren't simply going to move on, and neither are the FBI. The FBI are still determined that they can find out what happened to Lauren.
We're getting close. I think we're going to solve this.
Over the years, Lauren's parents have hired countless detectives and utilized every resource possible to try to figure out what happened that fateful night back in June of 2011. They believe that what happened to Lauren is connected to 4 people, all of whom were in Lauren's inner circle. They include Jesse Wolf, Jason Rosenbaum, Corey Hammersley, and Corey Rossman.
When something happens to someone, it's usually from their own circle.
People also found a white truck that was in the area where Lauren went missing on the night she went missing. The white truck happened to belong to an ex-convict. It's possible that he did something to Lauren.
Regarding the disappearance of Lauren Spear, do you intend to answer all the questions truthfully?
Yes.
But that's not all. Police also got new leads about Lauren's friends and what they were all doing on the night she disappeared. Many people believe that on the night Lauren died, she was taking some serious along with drinking alcohol, and that she overdosed after having a bad reaction to the drugs.
She OD'd. They got scared and drove her down to the Ohio River and disposed of her body.
But this is just one of multiple theories that the police are exploring. Basically, what happened to Lauren occurred within a very short distance, just 1 block. Life has continued on for those at Indiana University, a life filled with football, games, class, and parties. To many that attend there, they feel safe at their school.
It's hard not to get caught up in the energy and everything there. It really is like happy. I feel like
part of the community. And
exactly.
On moving day every year, parents drop off their children believing that they are leaving them in a place that will be safe, a place where they'll be able to get a good education and start the next stage of their lives. This is how Robert and Charlene felt all those years ago when they dropped their precious daughter off at school.
I didn't have any qualms about saying goodbye.
Did you have any sense at all that there could be danger there?
No.
No.
No, not at all.
In looking at the pictures of Lauren at school, she seemed to be a very happy student who fit right in and had plenty of friends. She was known to be very bubbly and excited to be studying for a career in fashion, which was her dream. But when it comes to college towns, nowhere is completely safe, just as was the case with Bloomington. It would later be determined that the drug scene was big in Bloomington. One former student who is now in recovery discussed the type of environment that caused him to fall into his addiction.
It was just a whole bunch of college kids that had money and could afford to do the things that they were doing.
Lauren's parents must have known that she would go to parties, but they couldn't have known the extent of what she was involved with.
Was it distressing to hear that there was this party scene and she was part of it?
I don't think I realized what degree, and it was a little bit of a shock.
After Lauren went missing, police would search her room and did find a small amount of illegal drugs. So they knew that parents did play some sort of role in what happened to her. It's known that on the night she disappeared, Lauren had been partying.
I think she didn't make wise choices that night, but she didn't make herself disappear.
On that night, she had spent some time with her friend, Corey Rossman. He would later tell a friend about what he claims happened.
He's like, well, me and Lauren were hanging out, just partying, pre-gaming before we went to Kilroy's watching the game.
Lauren and Corey made it to Kilroy's bar. They arrived there at 2 in the morning. They spent only about 30 minutes at the bar, but it was clear to everyone that she was heavily intoxicated. She left her shoes and phone at the bar. This shows just how not in her right state of mind she was at the time. Absent during that bar outing was Jesse, the man that Lauren had been dating since she was in high school.
Any rational boyfriend is going to be concerned if you're out with other boys, particularly at 2 o'clock in the morning, potentially drunk in a bar.
So, could a motive in this case have been jealousy? It seems highly possible. After Lauren left Kilroy's bar, there is about a 2-hour window where investigators believe something happened to her. It's known that Lauren and Corey walked from Kilroy's bar to her apartment, which was just about a block away.
They're going to her room up on the 5th floor of this building, having trouble walking, stumbling.
They step out of the elevator and come face to face with 4 other Indiana University students. They take issue with the way that Corey is handling Lauren. A scuffle occurs and one of the men punches Corey. Then Corey and Lauren left the scene quickly. Instead of going to Lauren's room, the pair leave the complex and head down a deserted alley. Lauren was walking barefoot as she stumbled several times. Eventually, Corey grows frustrated and ends up throwing her over his shoulder and carrying her. He takes her back to his own apartment.
She was not cared for in a way that I would want my son to care for another. And that's what kind of gets me, because the circumstances, I think, could have been a lot different had Lauren been escorted back to her apartment.
But that's not what happened. At 3:30 a.m., the pair arrive at Corey's apartment. We know that this happened because Corey's roommate had been home at the time. The roommate told the police that Corey threw up on the steps leading up to the apartment and then went to bed. Not knowing what to do with Lauren, who is heavily under the influence, the roommate decides to take her to a different apartment a short distance away. This apartment belonged to Jason Rosenbaum.
Jay sees what bad shape Lauren is in and said, Lauren, lay down on the couch, go to sleep, go home in the morning. And she won't do it. She says, I want to keep going, I want to go. Jay walks her to the door, and he sees her walk up 11th Street. He's the last person we are aware of that sees her alive.
The 3 men who last saw Lauren alive are identified as persons of interest, and they all hired lawyers very quickly. But what about Lauren's boyfriend? Was he concerned that his girlfriend was missing without a trace?
He helped with the searches on Saturday and Sunday. But then he left. His parents came to Bloomington and took him away.
What did you make of that?
I thought it was odd.
According to Jesse's friends, he had an alibi from the night Lauren went missing. He had been supposedly at home watching the NBA Finals that night and went to bed at around 2:30. But despite his supposed innocence, he refused to be interviewed by the news. He did, however, cooperate with the police and has continued to deny any claims that he had anything to do with what happened to Lauren. According to Lauren's friends, he wasn't the type of person who would have hurt her.
He's the most loving boyfriend you can ask for.
But was he really everything he seemed on the outside? And what about Corey Roseman? Had he really passed out when he said he did that night when Lauren went missing?
I'm not the last person with her. This is all I can say. I'm sorry, but I just hope that they find her as soon as possible, and I'm praying for her and her family.
Out of all of Lauren's friends, Corey Rossman was the least willing to cooperate with the investigation. This frustrated her parents. He also claimed that after he got punched by that guy at Lauren's apartment building, he lost all memory from the rest of the night. This was the story his lawyer was sticking with.
Punch or punches caused him a temporary memory loss.
But Lauren's parents didn't buy that story and instead think he is only trying to protect himself.
I think it's a case of self-preservation.
He knows more than he's saying.
I'm not sure of anything, but what I do know is that there's been a complete lack of cooperation. And he was the person that spent the most time with Lauren in the last hours of her being seen.
A year after Lauren's disappearance, her parents made an appearance on the Katie Couric Show to express their anger towards Lauren's friends and their belief that they, especially Corey, were stonewalling the search efforts.
Despite, their claims of doing whatever they could do, the fact of the matter is that they refused to meet with us, except for one of the boys. They refused to take a police polygraph.
At that time, Robert and Charlene were still holding on to hope that there was some sort of possibility that Lauren could still be alive somewhere out there. But Robert acknowledged that this possibility was slim.
And I understand that Lauren may no longer be with us. We ache for her. We want to bring her home.
A reporter confronted Corey on the streets in hopes of getting some sort of information out of him. It did not go well.
Corey, Brian Ross from ABC News 2020. Can we talk to you for just a second about Lauren Spear?
He refused to answer and walked a different way. Corey entered private property and informed the reporter that if he went any further, he would be sued. In 2021, it marked the 10-year mark since Lauren's disappearance. Has it become a cold case after all these years? Law enforcement claims this is not true.
Many times we are asked if Lauren's case is listed as a cold case. The answer to that is an unequivocal no.
Still, police are collecting tips and asking for any information possible in connection with this case.
It's a difficult time for the Bloomington community, and Bloomington police say that they have received more than 3,600 tips since that time, and they have executed 10 search warrants just in the past 3 years. Of course, Lauren's parents are devastated, and they have not given up their hope either.
After all this time, Lauren's parents no longer believe that their daughter is out there somewhere, still alive. However, they still cling on to the hope that one day they will find out what happened to her that tragic night. What do you believe happened to Lauren? Did she overdose on drugs, or could something more sinister have happened to her? Let us know in the comments.
You likely remember her name, Molly Tibbetts. Her disappearance in a small Midwestern town held the attention of the nation. As events unfolded, her case became a flashpoint for a national issue. At the height of summer on July 18, 2018, 20-year-old University of Iowa student Molly Tibbetts was dog-sitting alone at her boyfriend's brother's house. That evening, she went for a routine jog and never returned.
Molly had Snapchatted her boyfriend, Dalton Jack, not long before going for a run at around 10 p.m., but she never answered after that. Laura Calderwood, Molly's mother, recalls the heartbreaking moment she realized that her beautiful young daughter was missing.
First night she went missing, I was distraught, and I knew her phone was dead, but I sent her a text anyway saying, "I love you, we're looking for you, and we'll find you no matter what."
Molly had simply vanished. She was gone without a trace. She was missing from a place that most thought to be safe. Missing posters were put up all over town. People wore t-shirts and buttons with her face on them to try to draw further attention to the case. Everyone was looking for Molly, desperate to bring her home.
It's really tough. You never think, it's going to be in your small town. It's going to be someone you know on a missing poster.
The people of Brooklyn, Iowa, where Molly Tibbetts disappeared, came together to do anything they possibly could to bring her home.
I think that people just have seized on Molly's story because it's similar to their own children, and they know that if it wasn't Molly, it could have been one of their kids.
As soon as Molly's father learned of his daughter's disappearance, he immediately flew to Iowa to help with the search efforts. He did everything from passing out flyers to seeking help from the public through news conferences. The reward money posted for anyone that had any information regarding Molly's disappearance quickly got up to $400,000, with many people from the public contributing their own money. But despite this, weeks went by, and there were still no leads in the case. After over a month of searching, there was finally a break in the case.
This is breaking news on KCCI 8 News.
A first-degree murder charge was filed today in connection with the disappearance of Molly Tibbetts.
Molly's body had been found, concealed in a cornfield, not far away from the town she went missing from. She had been killed by multiple sharp force injuries. It was clear that what had happened to her was not an accident. In fact, they had a suspect in custody. He is 24-year-old Christian Bahina Rivera.
Investigators say they homed in on Rivera after someone provided them with a home surveillance video. The footage shows Molly jogging as well as a black Chevy Malibu investigators identified as Rivera's. Thinking he may have been one of the last people to see her alive, police went to speak with him.
During that interview, it was determined that Rivera saw Molly running and tried to approach her. During this point, he began running behind her, which understandably freaked her out. She told him that if he didn't leave her alone, she was going to call the police. She started running faster, and he began to chase her.
And he tells us that at some point in time he blacks out, and then he comes to near an intersection which we believe he then placed Molly. Can't really speak about the motive. I can just tell you that he seemed to be drawn to her on that particular day.
It would later be determined that he was an illegal citizen. He had been living in the US for somewhere between 4 and 7 years. He had been working on a farm where he gave his employer a fake name. As soon as this news spread, many people were enraged and began turning Molly's death into a political issue. People believed that through better screening processes, Molly's death could have been prevented. Even the then President Donald Trump took to social media to comment upon the issue of illegal immigration and demand justice for Molly. Things got so intense that her father even wrote an article in the Des Moines Register begging people to stop.
Her father went so far as to publish a column in the Des Moines Register saying, "On behalf of my family and Molly's memory, I'm imploring you to stop. For most of the summer, the search for Molly brought this nation together like no other pursuit. There was a common national will that did transcend opinion, race, gender, and geography. Let's not lose sight of that miracle. Let's not lose sight of Molly."
Molly's parents said that their daughter was someone who cared about everyone and wanted to make everyone happy. She wouldn't have wanted to be associated with such divisiveness. Today, Molly's mother gets through by trying her best to live life the way her daughter would have wanted.
I just try and find the silver lining in it. I know that this is how she would want me to react. And when I am sad, I think about her seeing me, and I don't want that. I want people to remember that Molly lived life to its fullest, and she wants us all to go on living our best potential life.
In 2018, Rivera was charged with Molly's murder. He pleaded not guilty, and his bond was set at a whopping $5 million. This was partially due to the judge believing that he may try to flee the country. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the case had a frustrating number of delays, but that didn't stop justice from being served. Finally, in May of 2021, Rivera would be found guilty of Molly's murder. Just weeks later, he faced sentencing.
Based on the jury's guilty verdict entered on the 28th day of May 2021, it is the finding of this court that the defendant is guilty and is now ordered, adjudged, and decreed that the defendant is guilty of the crime of murder in the first degree.
The judge did not hold back when discussing the ways in which the defendant caused irreparable damage.
Mr. Bahino Rivera, you and you alone forever changed the lives of those who love Molly Tibbetts. And for that, you and you alone will receive the following sentence. It is the order and judgment of this court, acting pursuant to the provisions of Section 902 of the Code of Iowa, that the defendant be and is hereby committed to the custody of Iowa Department of Corrections for a lifetime sentence with no eligibility for parole.
Do you believe justice was served for Molly? Let us know in the comments.
When something like this happens, when somebody goes missing, you want answers. But this case is incredibly unique. When you started to dig a little bit deeper, nothing is what it seems.
Suzanne Morphew went missing on Mother's Day in May of 2020, and from there on out, it became a nationwide search for her.
Suzanne Morphew, who was 49 years old at the time of her disappearance, seemed to have it all. She was from a small town called Alexandria, Indiana, and met her husband Barry when they were young. The pair had 2 daughters, Mallory and Macy, and what seemed to be the perfect life, complete with money and success. Upon Barry's choice, the family moved to Colorado, into an expensive home when the girls were in early adulthood. Barry ran a construction company while Suzanne was a retired teacher. From the outside looking in, it appeared to be nearly perfect. But the family was changed forever when Suzanne took off on her mountain bike and never returned home.
We see pictures of a beautiful woman, an active, physically fit woman, taking advantage of the mountains.
According to Barry, the night before Suzanne went missing had been a good night. They had a nice romantic evening, complete with a perfect dinner before going to bed. When he rose early to go to work the next morning, he said his wife was still asleep. Meanwhile, both Mallory and Macy were away on a camping trip. On the day Suzanne went missing, Barry was out of town, but he said he texted Suzanne to wish her a happy Mother's Day.
He received no reply. He had contact with his daughters, back and forth, can't get a hold of mother.
And then someone contacted a neighbor.
Right. The neighbor confirmed that Suzanne wasn't home, but that her car was there. After a brief search for her bike, the police are soon called. Police managed to find Suzanne's bike at the bottom of a ravine, but there's no sign of her. The first suspicion is that she may have been kidnapped. Barry made a plea to the public, asking for help in bringing his wife home.
Oh, Suzanne, if anyone is out there that can hear this, that has you, will do whatever it takes to bring you back.
He seems just like a concerned husband, desperate to bring his wife home, right? Maybe. Or maybe not. Police search the family home, and they find something in the master bedroom that catches their eye. It was essentially a spy pen that Suzanne had been using to try to record conversations Barry was having to see if he was having an affair. But it didn't work as she had intended.
Captured on the spy pen is a conversation between Suzanne Morphew and somebody named Jeff. And it's clear that Jeff is her lover.
They did not know who Jeff was, but it put a new wrinkle into the case for sure.
Suzanne was having an affair that continued up until the day she disappeared. In fact, she had sent her lover a selfie of her sunbathing before that bike ride that she never returned home from. So this brings up several questions. Did she run off to go be with Jeff? Or could Barry have found out about the affair and decided to take revenge? For about the first year after Suzanne's disappearance, and even up until this day, law enforcement have been incredibly tight-lipped regarding their investigation. This prompted Suzanne's brother to come to Colorado to launch his own search.
I need to get busy and not disappoint a lot of people that showed up here to help.
There was no resource spared in the search for Suzanne, and countless people, not only from Colorado and Indiana, but across the nation, contributed to the search effort. With little communication from the police, it was hard for the public to know where they were in their investigation. But then, just about a year after Suzanne's arrest, there was a huge break in the case.
The Chaffee County Sheriff's Office arrested Suzanne Morphew's husband, Barry Morphew. He was taken into custody near his home in Poncha Springs. He was alone at the time of his arrest, and he was arrested without incident.
Barry was arrested and charged with his wife's murder, as well as tampering with evidence, despite the fact that no body had been found. What exactly the police had on Barry was not really ever discussed. Throughout everything, Mallory and Macy chose to stand by their father. They did not believe that he had anything to do with it. Still, it seemed as the case had finally been wrapped up and that justice was going to be served. Surprisingly, this was not to be. As of April 2022, a judge granted the prosecution's motion to dismiss the murder case, allowing Barry to walk free. With his daughters on either side of him, with big smiles on their faces, Barry walked out of prison looking happy and relieved. So is that it? Barry is officially no longer a suspect in this case? Not necessarily. One of the reasons that the prosecution may have filed to dismiss their initial charge is so that they can refile new ones in the future with more convincing evidence against Barry. As of October of 2022, Barry filed a request to receive a list of belongings that were seized by police as part of the investigation. This request was denied by the court. What's next for this family? Nobody knows. But as of October of 2022, Barry remains a free man, and the truth of what really happened to Suzanne Morphew remains a mystery. What do you think? Could Barry be the killer, or is he just a mourning husband? Let us know in the comments. May the bright lights associated with these ladies taken too soon, including Lauren Spurrier, Molly Tibbetts, and Suzanne Morphew, be remembered forever.
You probably heard about tourism in the Chernobyl exclusive zone. I've been there myself several times, and it's nothing like what you see in games or horror movies. There are no ghosts, mutants, or radioactive anomalies, and death isn't waiting for you at every corner. Actually, I think it's one of the most peaceful and prettiest places on Earth. An example of strength of nature, and how it can reverse the damage we caused it. Thus, when my friend Alexei decided to go there, he knew who to contact. He is studying physics, and right now he's doing some kind of research on nuclear fallout, and he said that he wanted to get some direct measurements and samples. We both knew that it was just an excuse to go on an adventure. We visited the old power plant, the abandoned city Pripyat, and the surrounding exclusive zone. It was nice, but I would probably just bore you with more details. That part is not important anyway. We were driving on some dirt roads in the forest east of Pripyat when we found it. An old, rusty fence and a chained gate that blocked any further passage. There was a big sign with a radiation hazard symbol and captioned, "Restricted area, authorized personnel only." There was a pair of massive metal blast doors in the side of an artificially looking hill not far behind the fence, with a large white 0-13 painted on it, and "No entry" sprayed on top.
What do you think it is?
Alex asked. I don't know, it looks like some kind of bunker, I replied, and it looks like it's been closed for some time. I added after taking a closer look at the doors. The both halves were welded shut in the center. Alex took his samples and readings, but we were too puzzled to leave just yet. Do you think we can get in? I asked.
Well, not this way for sure. Even if it wasn't welded sealed, I'm sure we have no way of unlocking it.
Alex replied while examining the massive door. It looks like an underground bunker. They must have had a way to pump air inside. I don't think this is it. There has to be another way to get in, I said. We circled the main entrance to find another means of entry. The day was already coming to an end, and it was slowly getting darker. As we were searching, a thought crossed my mind. Why would they weld the doors? What's so important inside that they went this far to keep people away?
Look, there's something there.
Alex pulled me away from my thoughts. It was a concrete block a couple of meters large, with what looked like vents on the sides. As I looked into the vents, I noticed that they were also sealed with heavy-looking steel hatches and no clear way to open them. However, there was also a somewhat smaller door labeled Service Tunnel, with a large wheel on the outside. Should I open it?
Yeah, I really wonder what it is. Anyway, we don't have to go in. At least we'll see if the door still works.
At first, the wheel wouldn't turn because of the rust and dirt, but eventually it budged, and the door unlocked. I pulled, and it slowly started opening. It was very heavy, and it took a lot of force. Behind the door was a small platform and a tight vertical tunnel with a ladder. What caught my attention was that there was an identical locking mechanism on the inside. That meant they could lock the door from both sides, but why? We were lucky, because if they had it locked from the inside too, there would be no way to get in. I stepped inside and shined my phone light down the shaft. It wasn't strong enough to hit the bottom. The air was damp and old, and there was something that I couldn't identify. A very faint, chemical-like smell. There was no radiation or signs of any other hazards.
You've got to be kidding me. This is so cool. We have to come back here and check it out later,
Alex said. I couldn't agree more. It was almost dark now, so we resealed the door and called it a day, but we promised ourselves to return. I immediately tried to do some research when I got home, unfortunately with no success. I even called Pavel. Actually, it was him who brought me there for the first time. He couldn't help me either, but promised to ask around. I told him about our plan and asked if he wanted to go with us, but unfortunately, he was out of the country for a while. A week later, we packed our gear and went on with it. We brought some rope, heavy flashlights, some glow sticks, waterproof protective clothing, an oxygen meter, and a small emergency scuba tank just in case. And yeah, we're not stupid, so we told our relatives and friends about our trip and when we're expecting to return. We closed the door behind us as we descended down the access shaft. We couldn't know what was down there, and we didn't want to cause a radiation leak or something like that. We eventually dropped down into a concrete tunnel, which enclosed the air vents and some smaller pipes. There was obviously no power, and thus no lights. Good thing we brought our own. We followed the tunnels and reached another door, but this time it was a regular one, not the heavy bunker type. We went through and entered a room with 4 large air pumps and some electrical equipment and controls. The ventilation shaft split here into 2 larger ones that ran straight into the ground and 2 smaller ones that went straight across the room, where there was another set of doors. Behind the doors was a large hall with numerous boxes, crates, and other cargo just lying around. There was also a security checkpoint. Behind the checkpoint, we found the main door that we had seen from the outside. Just next to it, there was some heavy lifting equipment. We returned through the checkpoint and had taken a look at a set of elevators. There was a simple map with the layout of the facility floor by floor. We were on floor 0, main entry hall. There were another 4 floors below us. Floor 1, offices, security, and recreation. Floor 2, secure laboratories. Floor 3, accelerator, clean room decontamination chamber. Floor 4, experiment site. The map was titled Object 13. It wasn't a military bunker. This was a research site. We took a set of stairs, since the elevators were of no use without power. An unsettling thought brushed my mind as we were descending. They probably were moving some supplies, and then left them there and took the equipment to the main door. Were they trying to get out? I stepped down another stair step, but something rolled away from under my foot. I lost my balance and fell on my back. My pack luckily absorbed the impact, and I looked under my feet to see what caused me to fall. Empty bullet casings. This wasn't the sole reason why I felt odd about this place. As soon as we got down to level 1, I noticed that every single door was open. Every single one. There was a canteen and a kitchen right at the beginning of a long rectangular corridor, various offices surrounding the corridor. There was the regular stuff, paperwork, old computers, personal belongings, all right where they had left it. Did they leave in a hurry?
Dimitri!
Alex called from the canteen on the opposite side of the corridor.
What?
Was all I could say when I followed him to the corridor. There was food still neatly served on the tables, but it wasn't spoiled. It wasn't fresh either, but it wasn't decaying as a 30-year-old meal should. How is that possible? I asked.
I don't know. Maybe it was irradiated or something, but it's not anymore. I checked that. I really don't know, man.
He answered, as puzzled as I was. Why didn't we just turn back and leave? Now that I'm recording this, there were so many red flags already. Something really wrong happened down there, but I guess we were too excited and curious. But it was at this point that my excitement started to fade and was replaced with an eerie feeling. Nevertheless, we continued and descended down to level 2. The stairway ended here, and to go deeper, we would have to cross the entire floor to reach another one on the opposite side. There was a security checkpoint and a large blast door that we had to pass through to reach the labs. Again, every door was wide open. However, the things that people left here weren't neatly placed where they should have been. It was a mess everywhere. There were all kinds of rooms with all kinds of equipment that I didn't understand. Occasionally, there were more empty bullet casings on the ground. There still was the one central rectangular corridor as above, but the rooms around it were like a little maze. Almost at the other side of the floor, we found the head scientist's office. As I said, everywhere was a mess. But I found a logbook on the desk. There was a handful of pages, and the rest torn out. October 5th, 1984. Today, we successfully managed to translocate several atoms without changes in any physical properties. It's going to be a long road until we can transport solid objects, but we're doing some good work here. January 17th, 1985. We've managed to transport an apple today. However, I couldn't help but notice that the pattern of red and green skin on top was slightly different. But it was still the same apple with the same structure, the shape, and everything. We also tried to transport some electronics. They were unharmed and in working order. I think that we still have a lot to perfect and learn about this technology, but we cannot slow down now. The country is relying on us. February 21st, 1985. After the animal trials, we translocated our first human today. He's alive and healthy, a brave hero of our nation. We have proven that this technology works now, but the practicality is still very limited due to the fixed translocation ratio. We still cannot send matter, only exchange the position of 2 equally massive objects. I have proposed a new type of device that could possibly achieve one-way translocation of just a single object, but it would need an immense amount of energy. May 1st, 1985. Our superiors accepted my proposal. They're going to build a new, much bigger translocator here in the power plant, so we can use a nuclear reactor as a direct power source. There is one more thing. We've now translocated dozens of test subjects. Each one is alive and well, but sometimes they are a little bit, well, different. They sometimes claim that various events in the past happened differently than they really did. Sometimes they claim to know people who don't exist, or more alarming, they know people who they are not supposed to know. The following was written below with a pencil by hand. Test Subject 28 was speaking an unknown language and couldn't understand any real language after the experiment. There were a lot of missing pages afterward. April 25th, 1986. We're going to try to change our approach. It's been more than a year, and we're still unsuccessful in eliminating the translocation symmetry anomaly. We still don't even know what's causing it, but we are not going to make any progress this way. Today, we are going to try to access the conduit reality instead. Even though Unit 2, the one we built into the power plant, is still new, we're going to use it for this experiment. Who knows what wonders are waiting for us on the other side. There was one last page in the logbook. On it was a single phrase, written again and again. We let them in.
Alex, I think we should go,
I called. I stepped out of the lab and back into the hallway. There were clothes all over the corridor. Well, what was left of them. They were torn to shreds. No bodies, no blood, just strips of clothes and an occasional shoe or a watch. I looked up and stared down the dark corridor in front of us. I just stood there for a while. A wave of pure, instinctive dread washed over me. I couldn't move. I didn't even breathe.
Let's just get out of here,
Alex said. We turned around and walked away. Slowly at first, but we quickened our pace. Our footsteps echoed across the underground structure.
I just want to be out of here, man. We shouldn't have done this,
Alex said. I didn't tell him about the logbook, but my thoughts were cut short after sudden realization. His voice didn't echo. It was just our footsteps. I think he realized it too, because we both stopped and listened. Nothing. Just silence. I stepped forward. I took another step. There was this door just in front of us, and I forced myself to try something. I closed it behind us as we passed it, and I placed a glass beaker that I'd found on the ground on top. I took a step forward. Silence. It was just the echo after all. We walked away, carefully at first, but then we once again quickened our pace. We turned around a corner, and then it happened. The glass shattered. Someone, or something, just opened the door. We dropped all of our gear except for our lights and ran as fast as we could. I didn't even know I could run this fast. I always tried to be a tough guy, but I was never so scared in my life. Our footsteps didn't echo anymore. Or better said, they weren't in sync with ours anymore. Something was running after us. As soon as we reached the security checkpoint, we started closing the door. The sounds were getting closer. The rusty joints of the door squealed in protest, but we pulled with all of our strength. We almost had it closed when we heard a loud, guttural, and unnatural growl. The door slammed shut, and I threw the wheel to a locked position. My heart was pounding so hard that it was all I heard for a while. No, wait, it wasn't my heart, it was that thing, pounding on the locked blast door. We were running again. We reached the stairwell and ran up, taking 2-3 steps at a time. We finally reached the air pump room. The ascent really exhausted us, and even though I was scared shitless, I felt like I would pass out if I took another step forward. Besides, we locked it down there. Alex sat down and leaned his back on one of the large vertical vents with a bang. But then there was another bang, and another, and I realized something. We locked it down there, but we forgot the vents. Alex and I looked at each other, our eyes met, and then the vent burst and he was gone. I only heard him scream as he was dragged back down. I feel terrible for doing this, but I just ran. I climbed the service shaft and locked the service door shut when I was finally out of this hell. As soon as I had phone service again, my phone started beeping with loads and loads of missed calls and messages from Pavel. Hey, Dmitri, I found this guy. He says he knows what O13 is. Please pick up as soon as you can. He says it's dangerous and you should stay out of it. This guy's calling me now. He sounds serious. Please call me back at once. I don't know what's going on, but he's going there. Please. I hope you get this before you go down. Stay safe, friend. There was also one message from an unknown number.
Dmitri, this is Anatoly Moroz. I know what you have found, and I'm on my way from Kiev now. Do not go down there. If you already did, and you managed to get out, lock that door you used to get in and make sure it stays locked. I will try to call you when I'm here.
So here I am, recording this while I wait. I do this to make sure that no one else repeats our mistake, since I don't know if I'll live long enough to tell anyone personally. I just can't leave Alex behind. I have to go back.
College kids. What does the sign at the fence say? No entry. What does this here say? He pointed at the text sprayed across the main door. No entry. Do you think we just put these up because we don't have anything better to do? Like you? You really have nothing else to do but to snoop around things you have no business in.
He sighed.
Now look what happened. Look what you did. What your awesome idea brought you.
Morose yelled at me after I finished explaining what happened. First thing he did when he arrived was to check the service tunnel and make sure it was closed. He didn't even talk to me. He just ran there and made sure it was sealed and locked. He was an average-looking guy, probably in his mid-50s, but I think people would say that he looked older than he really was. "What is this place?" I asked.
"You have no idea,"
he said, stood up and walked to his car. "What are you doing?"
"I'm going to save your friend, and you're coming with me. You will do everything exactly as I say and nothing else. Stay quiet, try not to exhaust yourself. The air is not circulating, and you'll burn all the oxygen and suffocate. You will stay tethered to me by this line." He lifted what looked like a small retractable winch. "When I turn off my light, you will do the same immediately, and you won't move." He continued and pulled out a shotgun from the car's trunk.
Are these going to help?" I asked.
"To an extent, but you don't use it unless I tell you," he said and handed me a pistol. "Last thing, do you know how ozone smells?" He asked me, and I nodded. "Good. If you smell ozone, run." I started considering whether this was a good idea when he chained and locked the door from the inside with a massive padlock. "This is the only way we can keep them from getting out," he said when he noticed me watching him.
Hell, of course this was a bad idea. The worst one I'd ever had. So let me rephrase. I was contemplating whether I would ever see that padlock open ever again. Am I not going to get a key? I asked, watching him close it with a loud click.
"Sorry, I just have one. But don't worry, I'm right here," he said, sliding his hand across the line that we were connected through.
The tether reeled back and forth between us as we walked through the service tunnel. It gave me some sense of security, and I could be sure not to get lost and separated from the only person nearby. It created a sort of weird rhythm with the diesel fuel that sloshed around in the large canisters we carried. Our first stop would be the generator room on the other side of the main entry hall. The generator rattled and hummed as it slowly started spinning up.
"Did you see it?"
Morose asked.
"What?" "We have some time for talking until it turns on. Did you get a look at what took your friend when it happened?"
No, I answered.
"What is this place?" I asked again.
He stared into the air, sighed, and explained.
"It was originally a military stockpile in the 50s. In the late 70s, it was then repurposed into a research site. Anything that was too crazy for public to know about. And it was some fucked up stuff sometimes. Then they had this project about teleportation. They even rebuilt half the facility to house it. And that's when it all went to shit."
"Well, how do you know about all this?" I asked.
"I used to work here," he said.
"So what are these things?"
"They are..." He started, but then brushed off. "I don't know. I was just an assistant."
"Is there someone who knows?"
"Not anymore. Everyone who knew, well, let's just say they never left this place."
"And how did you get out?" The engine clutch engaged with a click and the generator finally came to life.
"I didn't. I took sick day when it happened."
The lights turned on for a brief moment and then shut off again as a circuit breaker popped.
"That's okay. We can't spare the power for the lights. We'll need it someplace else. You'll see,"
Morose said. Whatever happened here, whatever killed all the people down here, and God knows how it was all connected with the Chernobyl disaster, he wasn't here. He took a sick day. He took a fucking sick day.
"Come on, kid. Let's go."
We were at the lab security checkpoint me and Alex closed earlier during our escape.
"Remember, stay as quiet as you can now,"
Morose told me as we slowly opened the blast door. To our surprise, light blinded us immediately. Something shining right at us. I took a step back while my eyes adjusted to the light, and then I finally saw the source of it. Alex's flashlight. I went to pick it up, but Morose quickly stopped me with his arm and pointed into the blackness of the corridor in front of us. For a moment, we stood there, silent. Then I thought I heard something in the distance.
Morose immediately turned off his headlamp and gestured to me to do the same while he went and crouched in the corner. I followed and turned off my light too, but we were still lit up. Alex's light was still on, illuminating the room. Morose quietly cursed, quickly went to grab a flashlight, and then it was dark. Completely pitch black dark. People say that when you're under stress and you lose one of your senses, the other one's heightened to compensate. It's true. Or maybe it was just getting closer. It doesn't matter. I heard something drop to the ground with a muffled splat, then a few irregular footsteps. Not like footsteps of something walking with a pair of shoes. It was like someone walking barefoot, flesh on concrete. They were getting closer. I instinctively grabbed the gun Morose gave me, hoping I wouldn't need to use it. It was now so close that I could hear a slow, raspy breathing. I think I even felt a cold breeze on my face. Inhale, exhale, in and out. I don't want to think about how close it was. Then, something slammed into a wall down the way we came from, with a crash and the sound of glass and plastic breaking. Whatever thing was there with us turned and quickly followed it. I thought it was gone and I was safe. Out of nowhere, suddenly a hand brushed against me. I almost jumped and screamed, but the hand quickly moved and grabbed my mouth, preventing me from making a sound. Another hand grabbed my gun. "It's me. Follow me. Slowly," a voice whispered in my ear. We entered a room on the side, and I heard a door close silently. We waited for a while, and then we turned our lights back on. "Fuck, don't ever do that again." But he wasn't listening. He was looking at droplets of thick black fluid on the floor at the other side of the room. What is that?" I asked. "Blood. At least it was, once." Morose answered and followed the trail. We traced it across a few rooms until we stopped in a large chemical lab. There was something on the ground in a puddle of black liquid. It was Alex's knife. There was some red liquid too, and I could tell what it was without a doubt. Fresh blood. A trail of a few droplets went in the opposite direction of the black liquid. "Look, he must have gotten away," I whispered. "I doubt that. If we want to find him, we'll have to go to level 4. He just glanced at the knife and then acted like he didn't see anything. "But look, this is his knife. They must have fought here, and he went that way." I pointed in the direction where the blood trailed off. "He must be hurt." "That's one more reason for us not to waste time. Let's go." He stepped off back into the central corridor. I wanted to stay and search for Alex, but the tether that connected us wouldn't allow that, so I obliged and followed. Initially. "Morose, please tell me what's going on. How do you know he's not here?" "Because I know. Just shut up. We don't have time to argue." We weren't whispering anymore. "I'm not going anywhere until you tell me why you were so sure," I insisted. "Because he's dead." "What? But you said..." "Come on, let's go. This is not a place where we want to stay. We have to get down to level 4. Morose cut me off. "No, I trusted him at first, because he was the only one who could help me and help Alex. That was the only thing I focused my mind on, saving Alex. Only now I was realizing what I had gotten into, how blind and how stupid I was. He wasn't just an assistant as he claimed, and we weren't here to save Alex. I started unbuckling my end of the tether. "What are you doing?" he asked, raising his voice. "I'm going out. Give me the key to the padlock," I demanded. "No, I can't do that," he said, with agitation in his voice. I had no choice. I raised my gun at him. "Give me the key," I demanded again. "You really think I would give you a working gun? You're not going anywhere," he said and pointed his shotgun at me. I pulled the trigger. Fuck. "Why are we here? Why didn't you call your friends, your superiors, or whatever, to take care of this, but you have to hold me at gunpoint?" "Let's just say we don't share the same goals anymore. But have no doubt, they are coming here. But not with guns. With concrete. They're going to seal this place up for good, and we have to be quick if we want to be out by the time that happens." "Why can't you just please let me leave now?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Because it's a two-man job," he said, and looked me in the eyes. "There are things much more important than you, me, or your friend." I couldn't deny that. Maybe he was right, but I couldn't do this, and I didn't understand anything. "Who are you?" I asked him, returning my gaze. But then I looked away. Something caught my attention. The movement behind Morose. It was a creature crawling across the ceiling toward us. Its body vaguely looked like a human, but its skin was pale and stretched tight over its thin bones. Its veins were visible through the skin, filled with the same black fluid we found earlier. It had no hair, only holes where its nose and ears used to be. Its eyes were bloodshot and locked into a blank stare. We escaped it before, but our argument brought it back. It was too late to run now. Morose noticed my stare, but he wasn't fast enough. The creature lunged at him. At the same time, he turned around and fired a shot, but missed, and the thing knocked him to the ground. That shot was deafening in such a tight space. I heard only ringing in my ears. My eyes were slightly blinded by the muffled flash. In the confusion, I turned to run, but I forgot that I was still tethered to Morose. After the line was completely reeled out, it jammed, stopping me right in my track and sending me falling to the ground. I looked back and saw that the creature was now looking at me. Morose was lying there on the ground. I must have pulled it off him by yanking on the tether, and now it would come to make sure it won't happen again. I finally managed to disconnect the tether and threw the useless pistol at the creature, hitting its head. It briefly stumbled, and I ran to the only place that quickly came to mind. I barricaded myself in a storage room adjacent to the large chem lab, blocked the door with a shelf. The creature spent a minute trying to get in, but then gave up and left, presumably to finish off Morose. And I stayed in there, just sitting in the corner, too scared to do anything. I don't know how much time had passed, but it was starting to get hard to breathe. For a time, I thought I would just stay there and end it all, peacefully, instead of a violent death that was likely waiting for me on the other side of the door. But then I heard a voice call my name. Alex's voice.
Alex, is that you?
I called back.
Oh, thank God. I thought I would die here. You came back.
He answered. I went to open the door, but then changed my mind.
How did you find me?
I was hiding too, but then I heard gunshots, and I came here to look. Dimitri, please come out. We have to get out of here.
I sat down again. Maybe it was really him, but what if it wasn't? I didn't want to find out.
No. You said you were dead. I saw blood. No, it can't be you.
What? What are you talking about, Dimitri? One of those things got me pretty good, but I'm alive. Dimitri, just please come out and let's get out of here.
He pleaded. I had decided I wouldn't open the door, but then I changed my mind once again after what he said.
Dimitri, you remember the cherry tree? I knew you would come back.
We used to play at this huge cherry tree when we were kids. We used to climb it all day. But one day, I had this idea to make a bet. Whoever can climb the highest wins. I almost got to the top, but then I realized how bad of an idea it was. The branches under me were too thin, and I knew they could break under my weight any time. But Alex didn't want to lose. He tried to climb even higher than me. Then a twig he was standing on broke and he fell. Luckily, he landed on a pile of fallen leaves and only broke his leg. He could have killed himself if he fell on solid ground. It was my fault, and I almost got him killed because of the stupid bet. He decided not to tell anyone how it happened, because we were both afraid of getting in trouble, but I've felt guilty for it ever since. There was no way he could have known about the cherry tree if it wasn't him. I opened the door and there he was. He looked terrible, with bruises and scrapes all over, and he had a torn, blood-stained piece of shirt wrapped around his left hand.
Are you okay?
I asked.
I've been better. Let's just get out of here.
That's not going to be easy, I said. I told him what had happened up until now, and that the door was locked. Only Morose had the key, and he was either dead or gone.
There were some tools and supplies up there, right? Maybe we can find something to cut the chain.
Alex said, and we decided to try it. It was better than searching for Morose's key, after all. We found a shotgun, stained with blood, both his and the creature's, and immediately felt safer. We also picked up our packs that we dropped earlier. Luckily, all of our gear was still there. We carefully walked back to the main hall, but I felt that something was watching us the entire way. We saw some old saws and files next to the main door. We grabbed all we could, but we weren't alone. The inhabitants finally decided to make their move. One of the thin creatures crawled out of the stairwell. I aimed and fired, and it fell down from the ceiling, twitching like a dying insect, but it didn't matter because it wasn't alone. Another one crawled out, and then another and another. We ran to the air pump room and blocked the door by jamming a large saw between the handles. We worked quick because we knew that it was only a matter of time until they got through, or came through the vents. Alex couldn't operate the shotgun with his hurt hand, so he offered to do the cutting while I stood guard, ready to kill anything that would come out of the vents. It was working, but it was too slow, way too slow. Alex barely got through a few millimeters when I thought the door would break already. They were pounding on it and slamming into it, and I saw the rattle of the hinges, and I thought that they would get through at any moment now. And then they stopped. I coughed when a sharp odor hit my nose.
Fuck, what is that?
Alex asked.
Ozone. No, I said anxiously. I immediately realized that the odor was very similar to what we noticed when we entered the bunker for the first time, only much, much stronger. My Geiger counter started clicking too.
What's going on?
Alex asked. That guy Moroz told me about this. He told me to run, I said. Just as I finished, the door shook in an enormous slam, sending dust flying in the air and slightly bending outwards. There was nowhere to run. We had a heavy steel door on one side and God knows what else on the other. I had no idea how we could survive. Luckily, Alex did.
Do you still have the rope?
He asked. Without hesitation, I tied it around one of the pumps. It wasn't easy at first, working with the rope with my hands shaking violently, but then another loud slam echoed through the room. One of the bolts that held the door was launched across the room. I felt a wave of cold run down my spine, and suddenly, I had just this one purpose: to tie the knot. Everything else just shut down in my head. I finished, and we dropped the end down the broken vent that Alex got dragged into before. We stepped inside and started sliding down the rope. I then heard another slam, and what I think was the door hitting the ground. Whatever it was through. I slid faster, but the rope was starting to burn my hand. I lost grip and fell down a few meters, landing on top of another vent. It broke. I fell through, inside another corridor. Alex landed on top of me. It took us a few minutes to get back on our feet. I looked around and saw an orange-tiled door. Decontamination. We were on level 3. There was no handle, only a button on the wall next to it. I pressed it, and the door opened after a few seconds. We entered a small room with a control panel. Using it, I closed the door behind us. Several jets then blasted us with air. A green light popped up, and then another door in front of us opened, inviting us deeper into the facility. I noticed that the control panel was stained with a smudge of fresh blood. Was Moroz still alive and went through here? We couldn't go back. Our only option was to see how deep the rabbit hole goes. It was supposed to be a clean room, but the place was wrecked, even more than the upper levels. After some walking and searching, we found a room that looked like a makeshift infirmary. A few dozen beds separated with plastic curtains, some medical equipment. Some beds still had information clipboards attached. Patient 2, quarantine, survey team C, patient in coma, observation only, do not interfere. Deceased, 7/28, unknown. Patient 6, quarantine, survey team C, patient in coma, observation only, do not interfere. Deceased, 7/52, unknown. Patient 19, quarantine, on-site operative assistant, first contact with survey team C, massive blunt force trauma, chest, suspected internal damage, cranial concussion suspected, damage to cervical spine, dislocated left shoulder, fracture left humerus, multiple lacerations, chest. Deceased, 404, internal hemorrhage. Patient 7, quarantine, survey team C. Patient is unresponsive, mild to moderate frostbite, observation only, do not interfere. Termination order, signed A. Moroz. There were some body bags on the other side of the room, empty. We searched the area and eventually ended up in the lower levels of the facility. There was this rotten smell all around. We entered a room and, well, there was this substance everywhere. On the walls, floor, ceiling, everywhere. It was like flesh, with tendrils or veins running across it, like from a Dead Space game. Then we found bodies attached to it. Dozens shriveled up like dead insects in a spider web.
I think we should go back,
Alex said anxiously. We turned around and went back, but then I heard some debris shift in the distance in the corridor we came from. Soon enough, one of these things crawled into the light emitted by my flashlight. It stood there for a while, staring at us with its blank eyes, and then it leapt forward. But then it fell to the ground, dead, and an empty shotgun shell did too soon after. I heard more of them making their way toward us in the distance, so we ran deeper into the facility. I shot a few more on the way, but then ran out of ammo. We eventually found a long, dark tunnel flooded with water. The things were almost on us, and I could see them claw along the walls behind us.
We entered the tunnel. The water slowed us down considerably, and I awaited the worst, but then I noticed that they weren't following us. They wouldn't go inside the tunnel. We walked for, I don't know, an hour, 2. The water was ice cold. Luckily, it was only about knee deep, so it wasn't too terrible. I already said that Alex didn't look well since I found him, but as we walked through, he seemed to be getting worse. He complained that his head hurt and he felt dizzy. His skin turned pale and he looked very weak. After some time, I had to support him, and later, he completely collapsed and fell unconscious. We couldn't go back, so my only option was to find a way to drag him through the water. It went like this for some time, but then I heard something far away in the direction we came from. A splash. I turned and shined my light into the black tunnel. It's nothing. I went to continue walking, but then I heard it again. "Hello?" I called, hoping to hear an answer. Maybe Morose was here, or did the creatures follow us after all? It's nothing. I quickened my pace, but it wasn't easy dragging another person and moving through knee-deep water. The sounds continued. They weren't getting closer or farther, they were just there. And then I reached the end. The tunnel was closed off with another massive steel door and no visible way to open it. It was a dead end. I stopped moving and listened. Those sounds, it wasn't just a splash. It was more like as if someone or something was wading through the water. I panicked and started banging on the door, calling for help. I had nowhere to go. The sounds were getting closer now. I saw waves in the water. I slowly turned again and looked into the tunnel. I saw nothing, heard nothing. Just silence and darkness. Then the familiar scent hit my nose. Ozone. Then I heard metal shift behind me, and the door opened. "Dimitri!" The familiar voice called. "Morose." "What? Who is—" "Oh no. You brought it here." He pulled me and Alex through the door and then shut it again as fast as he could. "That's your friend? How? What happened to him?" he asked as he looked at still unconscious Alex. "I don't know. Are you okay?" I asked back. He had a large gash across his face and his right eye. "Well, no thanks to you," he responded. He noticed the makeshift bandages on Alex's arm and unwrapped it. What he had in his arm wasn't just a regular wound, it was a bite mark. "That," Morose said and pointed at it. "Stand back." He stood up and drew his pistol. "No, wait! At least tell me what's going on." "He's gonna be dead in a few minutes, and this will make it easier. For him too, but mostly for us." "What? Please, is there really nothing else we can do?" I pleaded. He looked at me, looked at Alex, and then stood there, thinking for a moment. I was immediately relieved when he holstered his gun again. "Okay, this might help him," he said, and dug up a case with a syringe from his backpack. It looked as if it was used recently and was only about half full of clear liquid. He injected Alex with the rest. "It won't matter anyway," he said. "What do you mean?" "Follow me. Take him too if you want. I'm not carrying him." "I guess you've probably already figured out that all this had something to do with the disaster 30 years ago," he explained as we moved through the facility. "The first machine we used was for the teleportation experiments. It wasn't powerful or reliable enough. We figured out that the whole thing wasn't as simple as it seemed. We weren't just teleporting one thing to a different place, we were transferring them between multiple parallel realities, but it was limited. We could only exchange 2 objects with equal mass between 2 identical places in 2 different realities. So, they built a new machine here, and used a nuclear reactor to power it, hoping that we could possibly move anything to any place between 2 given realities. We started exploring whole new universes. We saw worlds where the Germans won World War II, worlds where we destroyed each other, even worlds where life never evolved on Earth. But then, someone had this idea. If there were these parallel universes, what is between them? There was only one way to know, and that's when it went wrong, as I said. We should have been happy with what we had. We always want more, right? We tried to access this conduit reality, as they called it, but when they activated the machine, it stayed open. Something happened, and a portal was created. Independent from our machine, it was sustaining itself. So we sent a survey team in there. They came back after a few minutes reporting all sorts of strange things, and about how a strange feeling filled that space, how space and time themselves felt odd, even how some of them claimed to have seen themselves at different places at once. They wouldn't go back, even if threatened with all sorts of penalties. We sent a second survey team later. This one didn't come back at all, so we sent a third team to find them. They came back, but something wasn't right with them when they returned. Their minds were like erased. I pictured the blank stares of the creatures we fought on the way. Shortly after they returned, a massive burst of energy flowed out from the portal, straight up into the reactor, but that wasn't all. And you know all this because you took a sick day, right? I asked. I was at a different place in the facility. I'll never forget when they came to me, saying that something came through into our world. What was it? I asked. I don't know. Nobody knows. It was unlike anything we've ever seen, and it killed almost everyone here. Not just killed, it did stuff to people. You've seen. We're here. We entered a control room filled with computers and various controls and displays. Rose closed another blast door and sealed us inside. We need to close the portal. We've tried it before, but these things wouldn't let us. So where are they now? As soon as I heard that you went inside the facility and came back, I knew something was off. This place used to be full of them. At least one is still there. The smell of ozone. But a few years ago, anyone who went in wouldn't get past level 1 alive. But we've got this far. I don't know why. That's what scares me. Something isn't right. I know that I'm asking for a lot, but we need to go inside the portal and use this. He emptied his backpack and took out a crude-looking contraption with all sorts of wires, coils, and other bits hanging from it. We need to place one end in the other reality and then return with the second end into ours. If it works, it might just cause the portal to collapse. And how do you know that the same thing that happened to the third team won't happen to us too? That's the thing. I don't. But I tell you this. You know how they built that concrete shield over the reactor? They weren't trying to seal the reactor. They were trying to seal this place, to prevent whatever came into our reality from getting out. And a few years ago, the thing we feared most happened. The shield started cracking. They were trying to get out. So they built a new containment building recently, as you know. But for how long will this go on? Sooner or later, something will fail and they will get out. This might be our only chance to end this for good. How the hell did I get into this? I thought. I was just some random guy at the wrong place at the wrong time, but Morose was talking as if the fate of our world depended on me. But maybe he was right. Maybe whatever set of coincidence has brought us here, brought me here. Maybe me and Morose were the only people who could do what needed to be done. All right, let's do it, I said. We put on a pair of what looked like modified spacesuits, left everything other than the device in the control room, and entered the machine. We were in a dome-shaped chamber filled with complicated machinery. In the center, there was a sphere of white light. Above it, a black, hollow shaft going straight up with cracks and debris around the opening. We tethered ourselves to a steel rail and Morose walked forward into the sphere and vanished. After some hesitation, I did the same. I found myself in a place that I can't describe. There was no up or down, and I could walk in any direction. It looked empty, yet I could see countless, infinitely large shapes with billions of tiny, shiny dots on the surface. Here. Where are you? I called. Come, he said and grabbed me by the arm, seemingly out of nowhere. I noticed hundreds or thousands of other white spheres in the distance around us. Are those? Yes, portals from other parallel realities. Are we gonna close them all? No, just ours. The others are not our problem. They will have to find their own way to handle it. We walked towards one distant shape. As with everything here, I struggled to describe it. It was like a fractal, the same shape repeating over and over and over again. I think this is it, Morose said, and started doing something with the device. It beeped several times and then started making a high-pitched hum. Oh, no, this isn't good, he continued. What's going on? Listen, I need you to take the other end and return. Once you're back, pull this switch and keep this button pressed until it activates. I picked up my end of the machine and watched as the wire started unreeling between the two. What about the key to the door out? I asked. There is no key. What? But you said that wasn't the plan. This was always the plan. I couldn't risk... He didn't finish. I saw something in the corner of my eye. Movement. Shit! Don't look at it! Go! Now! Run! Moreau said, and I listened. I ran back, followed the line back into our portal with my eyes almost closed. I went through and placed the device on the ground, flipped the switch, and the device started producing a similar high-pitched noise. I pushed the button. For a second or two, nothing happened. And then, suddenly, the device or the portal let out an ear-piercing whine, an intense flash and a wave of heat. And then, it was gone. Severed wires and tether line laid there on the ground, where the portal used to be. In the meantime, Alex woke up. He looked much better, and I told him what happened while he was out. We didn't know what to do now. We thought about going back and trying to cut the chain on the door outside again, but after what happened last time, we doubted that it could work. We probably wouldn't even get there alive at all. But then Alex had an idea. It took us several hours to figure out how the controls worked. It was heavily damaged and the reactor was obviously out of the question, but the generators above supplied enough power for a simple translocation, as they described it. All we needed to do is input a target vector. And then, a familiar clicking and a smell of ozone came. A powerful slam shook the whole room and left a large dent in the steel door that connected the control room with the rest of the facility. Fuck, not again! I yelled.
What if we can use the machine to teleport out of here? I think I got it. They have some vectors written down here. We just need to add some height and we'll get above the ground.
Alex explained. Make it fast, I said as the door shook in another slam. He did something, and the controls lit up with alarms sounding. We ran to the core chamber and closed it behind us, and just as we heard the control room door give way, we stood in the center and waited. Sparks and smoke filled the room as the machine did its thing. Please work. I heard another slam, and the door to the chamber broke off the wall and fell to the ground. I looked over, and then... time froze. I didn't feel fear. I felt at peace. I felt as if I was just a step away from understanding everything. I wanted to stay here. Forever. A flash suddenly blinded me, and then I bumped my head into something. I opened my eyes and breathed in fresh air. We were laying upside down in a crater-like hole in the ground in a forest. We were out. We found our car after a few minutes. We saw several military helicopters fly in the opposite direction as we drove home. Alex checked into a hospital with a made-up story of an animal attack. He was okay in the end. We didn't talk about it again. It was over, and I thought our world was safe from whatever stayed at the other side of the portal. But when I finally returned home that day, I noticed something wasn't right. The old cherry tree that we used to play at when we were kids, it wasn't there. There was an apple tree instead. January 17th, 1985. We've managed to transport an apple today. However, I couldn't help but notice that the pattern of red and green skin on top was slightly different. We were transferring them between multiple parallel realities. Portals from other parallel realities. Are we gonna close them all? No, just ours. The others are not our problem. They will have to find their own way to handle it. I think I'm not in the reality that I lived in before. I think that when we teleport